Trump, Iran, and the pressure that exploded into the streets. In this video, we're not asking what happened in Iran. We're asking why pressure keeps returning to the streets. We'll look at Trump's Iran strategy, not as a speech, not as a policy, but as a system of pressure. We'll talk about sanctions, threats, silence, and the moment when pressure stops being diplomatic and explodes into the streets. This isn't a video about one country. It's about how power speaks when it doesn't use force. There was no announcement, no press conference, no declaration of war. And yet the streets of Iran filled. Crowds gathered across cities already strained by inflation and scarcity. Voices rose, not with ideology but with frustration. Then came the sound that always changes everything. Gunfire. Protesters were shot. Videos spread before the internet went dark. And Iran, once again, became more than a domestic crisis. It became a signal. Donald Trump did not order the shots. He did not plan the protests. He did not manufacture the anger that pushed people into the streets. But he understands something many policymakers avoid admitting. Pressure does not begin with violence. It begins by shrinking space. Less economic room. Less political flexibility. Less margin for error. When systems are squeezed long enough, resistance does not need to be organized. It emerges. Trump has never viewed Iran as a misunderstood state waiting for reconciliation. He does not treat it as a future partner that simply needs incentives. He sees Iran as a system sustained by oil revenue, internal enforcement, and the belief that it can endure longer than its opponents. And his strategy has been consistent. Do not negotiate first. Do not ease pressure. Force the system to respond. Because systems rarely change when they are comfortable. They change when they are cornered. The protests in Iran were not created by American policy. They were driven by economic collapse, corruption, and a population exhausted by stagnation. But timing matters. These protests erupted as sanctions tightened, as revenues declined, as isolation deepened. This was not coincidence. It was stress revealing weakness. The real question is not who caused the unrest. The real question is whether the system can absorb it again. Iran's leadership faces an impossible choice. Allow dissent and protest becomes normalized. Suppress it and legitimacy erodes. So the response is force. Live ammunition. Mass arrests. Communication blackouts. Control at any cost. But every act of repression carries a consequence. Fear may silence crowds temporarily, but it also teaches a dangerous lesson. That the system survives through coercion, not consent. Trump's response to these events has been notably restrained. No sweeping statements. No promises of intervention. No public embrace of the protesters. This silence is not indifference. It is strategy. Open American support would allow Tehran to frame unrest as foreign manipulation. Quiet pressure leaves the regime alone with its people, and with the images spreading beyond its control. Officially, this is not regime change. The language is avoided. The accusation is denied. But strategies are defined by outcomes, not declarations. What is being tested is simple. Can Iran's current system survive sustained economic pressure, while internal unrest continues to resurface? Or does pressure eventually transform unrest into fracture? History offers no comfort here. Systems rarely collapse from a single blow. They fail when economic strain meets political rigidity and public disbelief. The Soviet Union did not fall because it was attacked directly. It fell because pressure exposed its contradictions. Trump's approach follows that logic not as theory, but as instinct. Yet pressure is inherently dangerous. Cornered systems do not always negotiate. Sometimes they escalate. Through proxies. Through regional destabilization. Through miscalculation. And this raises the most uncomfortable question. How much instability is acceptable? Before pressure becomes conflict, Trump is betting that Iran bends. History suggests that some systems break instead. For analysts, this is strategy. For protesters, it is blood. They did not choose sanctions. They did not choose geopolitics. They chose the street. And that leads to the final question this moment refuses to answer. Can a strategy be considered successful when its cost is paid by civilians? Trump does not measure suffering. He measures outcomes. But the suffering is visible and rising. There are only three paths forward. 1. The regime tightens control and survives. 2. It negotiates from a position of weakness. 3. The situation spirals beyond control. Trump is betting on the second. Iran fears the first will not hold. The region fears the third. This is not just about Iran. It is about a new model of power, where sanctions replace invasions, where pressure replaces occupation, where instability becomes a tool rather than a consequence. Iran is the test case. If this works, it will be repeated. If it fails, the cost will be long-lasting. The streets have spoken. The regime has answered. And Trump is watching. The question is no longer whether there is a plan. The question is, what happens if it works? And what happens if it doesn't? Because either way, the streets will remember. And history will record the silence that followed the gunfire.